Well, hello and welcome everyone to Overtime. I remember really like it was yesterday, 4 years ago, almost to the day, when I was watching the results of the election. In Time did not yet exist, so I certainly wasn't broadcasting. And I was watching, and it was a few hours before anybody could tell that something was wrong. I wasn't a fan of Hillary Clinton, and having been in the Obama campaign against her, we learned that she certainly did some, at a minimum, unscrupulous tactics. And when you talk about her being ruthless, yeah, she really was. And I don't know what that means for her ethically. I don't know, and it's not really worth getting into. I certainly wasn't a huge fan of hers. I did always say, and this is true, she was the single most vetted candidate in human history for any office, period. And in that period of time, they were able to really find precisely zero that they could really get her with. The emails, she didn't delete a single email. I'm sorry, she didn't. All you had to do was read what Comey wrote and read what happened. They were deleted by a technician. He did so well after the fact, after he had reported they were already deleted. He did so in violation of the law, and Hillary Clinton thought they were deleted and had no way of knowing, and this was all before the subpoena. Once the subpoena came down, he said, "Oh, Jesus, I should have deleted those, so why don't I do it now?" Which is illegal. Fuck. And it had nothing, but nobody really cared. And so Hillary had gotten utterly destroyed. So as someone who respected her abilities and respected how well a job she would have done, despite really not liking her personally, and having close family members that were on a first-name basis with her. So this caused some contention because I was just not a fan. But it was going to be the first woman president, and we watch as someone who was very qualified and would have made this country proud, one way or another, unless you were sexist and couldn't fucking read a report. And we watched as the guy who talked about murdering families of terrorists, which would be their children, their wives, whether they knew what their husbands were up to or not. And we watched this guy who had talked about, let's kick out all the immigrants, and we're getting the worst ones anyway, really. No understanding of history and how many people have said that before and how they've all been wrong, and this country was built by the worst of other countries, like Albert Einstein. And I watched as this guy's numbers started to go up. And I watched as he looked on the screen in horror because he didn't want to be president. He just didn't like being ridiculed and being told that his being president was a joke. So he ran. And as he realized he was going to win, the look on his wife's face was of abject horror, as was his. They couldn't hide it. They did not want this. And I realized little less than half of this country didn't care that he wasn't qualified, didn't care that he was a horrible person who thought it was okay to grab him by the pussy. Didn't care that he was incompetent and had run businesses into the ground, that he had withheld his taxes for one pot. If his taxes showed that he had made half the money he said he did, would have seen him. There's only one reason to hide him. It's the reason everybody knows, and it's the reason he's been audited by the IRS for 10 years. It's because he's fucking around, and he talks about it and brags about it. And half of my country wanted him president. Some just for spite because he pissed off people like me. Some because they hated Hillary Clinton, who, again, I can empathize, to be quite frank. Again, acknowledging she was qualified as fuck. And I'd still have been proud nonetheless. And I cried that night because my wife was upstairs and I realized I'd have to tell her that this guy, the misogynistic, racist, probably, almost certainly given what we've seen here, at a minimum, he doesn't care if other people are racist. This guy who hates immigrants, who hates poor people, who judges you not based on what you can even produce, because, and lucky for him, but based on who you know. This guy was going to be running this country. And people told me it wasn't going to be that bad. And people told me that I was imagining things. And I said, no, because this is how you undermine this country's institutions. And this is what happens in the end when you do that long enough. And Barack Obama's last words as he were leaving, or among his last words as he was leaving the White House, was, I think we're about to find out just how strong our institutions are. This man not only pledged to make America great again, but has succeeded in doing so by his own campaign's admission, or by, if you listen to their rhetoric, and has said that for the next 4 years he wants to keep America great, now that he's made them great again. And we have had, for the first time that I'm aware of, significant violence in the transfer of power, which has been opposed by the sitting president, while the Capitol building falls to what I still call protesters for a number of reasons I'll get into later, but have been called by everybody seditionists against the United States government. By their own party, they have been called this. And I've watched this president stand up and say, this is a great day, and we should all remember this day. Go home now and stop the violence, but this was a great day. Now, he's changed his tone a bit, and we'll get into that. Don't think that that's where we stand today, and we'll update it. But there are people who sit there and say, you couldn't have seen this coming. I cried the day he was elected. And I couldn't go upstairs and tell my wife, and I didn't know how to tell my children. Because even at their age, they fucking saw it coming, because they saw him on TV and said, Daddy, who's the clown? And I'm sorry if there are people who didn't see it coming. And I don't want to say that this is a left or a right thing, because there are idiots on the left too. But I'm not going to sit there and say that they get off the hook because they were just so desperate to piss off the liberals that they were willing to overlook the fact that this guy had failed at nearly every business he had done, lied about absolutely everything, didn't know the Bible from a barbecue cookbook, and was cheating on his taxes, his wife, and was brought in by the Christian. Are you kidding me? This had nothing to do with any values that anybody on the right has ever told me they had. So we stand here now. His second cabinet member, Betsy DeVos, has just resigned. They are leaving in droves. We're going to discuss why. There's at least one reason, in my view, possibly two. We're going to discuss a number of other things. Right now, the cabinet continues to discuss in small groups, not as a whole, the invoking the 25th Amendment to forcibly remove the president from power. The Speaker of the House has strongly endorsed this and said if it's not done, they're going to drop articles of impeachment immediately. High-ranking members of the RNC have endorsed this. His own party, again. Most Democrats in the Senate and the House have endorsed this. Major unions have endorsed this. The former Kelly, Trump's former chief of staff, has said he has to go. 5-star generals want him gone. And the likelihood that what he did yesterday was seditious and or treasonous is looking higher and higher the more we look at it. And in the same way that we had discussed when we talked about Pinochet and how he came to power, how Hitler, who was democratically elected, came to power. It's interesting because when we last discussed that in earnest, we were discussing Pinochet. And we had on a very long-time friend of the show, Zandering, who we've had on more than a few times, and sometimes in Hangouts and in just as a guest. And we have him here today. Is Zandering? I think you were muted, so if you want to unmute yourself there and say hello. And actually, well, say hello, and then I want to do a quick super chat that we had that come in. But please do say hello first, and then we'll hit the super chat.
Hey, may you live in interesting times.
Oh, dear Lord, tell me about it. Yeah. Yeah. Yesterday was interesting. That was fun to cover live. That was
Oh, it was definitely interesting to get out of the shop working on trying to deal with my truck and come out and realize that a show that normally runs a reasonable amount of time is still live after 4 hours, and you're like, what the heck did I just miss?
Yeah, so so for those who weren't watching yesterday, so Andrew, I guess, saw the beginning of our show. We were starting. He knew we were starting. Gets the notification we're starting. Over time, does breaking news. So we did the breaking news, and he's just like, oh, okay, there's something going on. How long were you in the shop, or what happened?
Well, I was trying to figure out what was wrong with the truck, because it's been a complicated, very time-consuming issue, and I've got several different people barking at me about what's going on with your truck. I've got a load. So yeah, it was real hectic. So I wasn't focused a whole lot on the outside world. I was trying to deal with my problems. And it happened to pop up on my notifications because I've got it set up to notify me. And I was like, oh, maybe when I get done with this, I can pop in and see what's going on. And a lot of stuff happened, and it took longer than expected. And then I kind of forgot about it. And then when I finally went to sit down in their waiting room to twiddle my thumbs, I said, oh, let me go back and check what the show was about. And I turned it on, and you were still going. I didn't even realize you were live when I clicked on the icon. I just clicked on it and then realized that the live chat popped up, and it was still going, and it wasn't a replay. I had the chat bar at the bottom, and I was like, you're still going. What the hell? And then I saw the little pictures down at the bottom of all the crap going on, and you were talking about some of the stuff, and I was like, you've got to be kidding me.
Yeah,
like the one time I'm off the road for 2 weeks and like out of the loop of what's going on in the rest of the world. That's when everything happens.
And Zandering he's a friend of the show. We have a lot of friends. There aren't a lot of friends that we bring on. He is well educated. He is eloquent and knows how to give his opinion. He is patient with people who disagree with him, which is basically everybody on this show. And he is. He's thought out his opinions, and he's oh Jesus, I think I'm still very tired. It was a long night last night, but we have him on because he's very good at his opinions do in fact in many ways differ widely from most of us on the show, but in many ways actually I think fundamentally I think we all agree on a number of principles of integrity and truth, and I think that's one reason why, especially when something goes wrong, despite the fact that you are by most measures a conservative. Depending on who's using the yardstick, a Republican, I think that may have to change at some point soon.
I'm seriously considering never, ever referring to myself as a Republican ever again. I mean, I've always more or less referred to myself as an independent because I truly care about, what it is, the things that people want to do, not so much what political party they're a part of. because I think the political parties are just that. They're political, and they do a lot of really shady backdoor dealing shit to get things done. And so I've always tried to maintain that I'm an independent because I'm willing to have my mind changed on things. So.
All right. Well, let me hit this super chat. So Peter Ustin, I think, hello from the UK. Could Trump take the country to war and thus stay as president? Oh, I didn't understand what he was asking. If we are at war, stay as president. No, it wouldn't have an impact. He could still be removed. I don't know if it could be. I don't think that influences the 25th in any way. I think the 25th can be invoked at any moment. Would that affect impeachment? That's a good question. I doubt it. And that does remind me, Landon Knoll is probably one of the smartest human beings I've ever met. We've had him on many times. We've enjoyed his company. And he knows a lot about impeachment, having actually gone through the process and impeached a government official. So I put a link in on his, because we had a discussion, and we've had a series on civics. We've covered the Supreme Court. We've covered impeachment. We covered the presidency and how these actually were established as opposed to sort of the myth and legend. And impeachment, I think, is one that is not understood, the history of or why we have it and why it's important. And among other things, which is one of the reasons we have to have impeachment is because the president has to be above the law, actually. And what I mean by that is the immediate thing was, it used to be that if you wanted to win a vote, you'd arrest the people who were going to the other senators or the other people who could vote, whether it was a senator, congressman, whatever. You'd try to arrest them or you'd try to find some legal way of detaining them before they get to the. So they had to be immune to at least nuisance suits. And so, at least for a short period of time, but there also then would have to be a way to pierce the veil of that immunity. So the president cannot be sued in most cases, but that immunity can be pierced by impeachment, and what that means and how and why. At any rate, the link to that show and how and why is down below. I think there is an interesting thing, and this is important to note, because of the potential of witness tampering and the potential of trying to abuse impeachment powers, and there's already plenty of potential for abuse. Once the impeachment, if an impeachment is successful, which is to say that the articles of impeachment pass the House, the president can no longer pardon himself on any aspects regarding the impeachment until the trial is concluded. What that means is if he is impeached on anything that has happened to date, once that impeachment starts, or once he's impeached, so I'm conflating there, he will not be able to pardon himself. Now, we can get into all of that, and we'll discuss all of that later, but getting back into sort of where we are on the show. So there are some safeguards in place. If he were to start a war, that would have, to the best of my understanding, absolutely no impact on either the ability to remove him through impeachment or through the 25th Amendment, all of which we will discuss. So let's see, and let me just check, and let's just see if there was anything else. So, and we can discuss all this on the Discord, and we're always on the Discord. So, okay. So you dropped in, and I thought that was a joke because you're just like, oh, hey, what's going on? I was just like, you're kidding, right? I was just like, what rock have you been under? Oh, dear Lord. And I'm
under the rock of...
Yeah.
I'm under the rock of backwoods mechanics in Iowa. That's what rock I'm under.
I got snarky about it. I was like, oh, nothing. Shootout at the Capitol building, sedition, president maybe suborning treason. Just a couple things. Some of his cabinets resigned, by the way. A whole bunch of people.
I actually had to get my tablet out so that because on my phone everything's so small, and that's what I first opened it up on. It's like I had to actually go out. I went out into the shop, told them I needed to get some stuff out of my truck. They had to escort me out in the shop just so I could get my tablet, so I could actually see the pictures that you had up on there. And I just kind of sat there and just stared at them. So I almost wished I could have gotten like a picture of what my face looked like as I sat there and everything started going out and you started going through what had happened. And I was like, I know this isn't HBO. How this doesn't happen in a civilized country.
Yeah, well, yeah. Welcome to the great America. All right, so let's talk about what happened, and let's talk about. And yes, I did get that message. Thank you, Titan. And you're correct, as usual. Unfortunately. So let's talk about what happened. And I think everybody knows for now, and I'm going to give the broad strokes, and we're going to get into some details. And there's some important stuff that nobody's talking about that I think is actually far more serious. Appears to be. The fact that nobody's talking about it makes me kind of wonder. But on the flip side, we've caught a few of those in the past, and I'm wondering. So what we have is this. Trump, of course, had been saying that the election was invalid. He didn't lose the election. Yada yada yada. And then the day before. It drops that he was trying to get the state of Georgia to overturn the election. Well, he was trying to get the Secretary of State to find an extra 11,000 votes and put him over the top. Quote, find an extra 11,000 votes. Now, the Attorney General of Georgia has made it crystal clear that they are taking that very seriously. And if they are taking that as seriously as they suggest, he is already in extraordinarily deep trouble because messing with the election is in most states, the fines are pretty hefty. That's one reason why there isn't a tremendous amount of voter fraud is because you don't get a lot out of it necessarily, and there's huge fines for trying. And this is a president suggesting that the Secretary of State find an extra 11,000 votes in his favor. That alone was pretty staggering, and that was, that's breaking news. We broke with that, and we're like, okay, here's the audio. It was quite shocking. I think we all knew he was capable of it, but nonetheless. So then we end up with yesterday where protesters breached the Capitol building, entered. There was some confusion. We had a couple reports that there, in fact, was a gunfight. To the best of my knowledge at this point, we actually only have one confirmed shot fired, hit a woman in the neck. She later died. 3 other people died. One of a heart attack suffered after he tased himself with what appears to be his own taser. And what appears to be the Capitol Police capitulating, and pictures of them taking selfies in some cases with neo-Nazis, which appear to have been in somewhat a higher proportion in this group than you would hope, but that would be expected given the set of circumstances. We have an image. I don't think we have it up. We showed it yesterday. I think most people have seen it now, of 3 officers attempting to repel what would be 500 protesters outside the floor of, I think that was the House, and it appears they may never have breached the floor of the Senate. At any rate, they took the building. One of the most stark and shocking pictures for me was the image of Nancy Pelosi's computer, and we could see like her email, her daily schedule, like her IMs, and it's just like, oh, okay. Like you can just see the guy there saying like, hey, we got an email here. Anyone want to, Domino's? We could just, type it in. Okay. That was shocking. And something that happened very concerning there. I want to quickly sort of hit everything that happened since. So we'll get back to that in a second, but just to do, again, a very quick rundown so we're all on the same page at the 10,000-foot view. Eventually, they get kicked out by what appears to be a combination of the FBI and mostly National Guard, who came in from the basement and got rid of most of them. It looks like there were very few injuries or casualties in the process, so it does look like it was reasonably peaceful in the way that it was done. Congress returned to session. They finished the process of certifying the election, which is why this happened on that particular day. They were certifying the election. The election was certified, and Biden is now officially going to be the next president. The next question that came up is a lot of people were calling for Trump to be removed. Several congressmen said that they would immediately begin impeachment procedures against him. How and why we will discuss. But a number of others said invoke the 25th Amendment and just get him out now. The 25th Amendment is where the vice president, who had just been thrown under the bus and called a coward by Trump earlier that day, we'll get into it. The vice president goes to the cabinet and says, I'm invoking the 25th Amendment. If they approve by a majority vote, he then goes to Congress. If the House approves by a super majority, that's 2/3, it goes to the Senate. And if the Senate approves by 2/3 majority, he is removed from office. Keep in mind that this is a temporary removal, but given how few days he has in office, it's essentially, and for all intents and purposes, permanent. So I don't think I missed anything. Did I miss anything salient, Isandering? And then we can go by, everybody I think knows the big picture now, and I think we're all on the same page.
Yeah.
Is that
seems like a pretty good rundown.
All right. Perfect. Pence was told, it was instructed by Trump to not certify and to say, nope, hey, guys, well, there are serious problems with this election. Go back, change the votes, bring them back. He said he wouldn't do it. His campaign went to a court to empower Pence to to actually say, nope, these votes should have been for Trump, and to actually turn the vote right then and there for Trump. Pence said no. The office of the vice president should not have that level of power, and he actually argued for the other side and appears to have been successful, and his office was not given that power. So I was wondering, why do you think he would do that?
Well, you would hope that the reasoning behind doing that would be because he actually believes in the Constitution and the rule of law, and realizes that, you know, if you give power like this to yourselves, at some point your opposing party is going to also have that exact same power, and you don't want to give your enemies weapons that they can then use against you.
Okay.
Another reason I think that he may have done that is that at this point, looking, I mean, you can kind of see, especially after the election, all the way up through this point, the meltdown of Trump, just doing more and more bizarre things and spouting more and more nonsense about how he actually won. This is all invalid. I honestly believe that he's trying to distance himself from the last image we're going to have of essentially the head of the Republican Party, and going, yeah, we're not really in agreement with this guy, and this isn't something that we should be doing.
All right. Well, and to your other point, because one of the things that I get into arguments with people all the time is, ideologically, I am far closer to Trump than I am to Pence. Period. End of discussion. Pence, as far as I'm concerned, is interested in turning this into this country into essentially a Christian caliphate. I mean, I genuinely think he'd probably be okay on a long enough time scale. You could get him to consent to killing homosexuals. I think you probably could. I think that he's that extreme. So he and I disagree strongly on a lot, and I don't think Trump is there in that sense. On the flip side, he follows the rule of law, and I do think that he genuinely believes that the Constitution was inspired by God. And what that means is when his boss, Trump, who he is loyal to, I mean, he has been loyal, when his boss, Trump, says, we are going to ignore the Constitution, he says, I may be loyal to you, but God comes first. And I think that's why he said, no, I'm not going to break the Constitution. And I mean, I've never seen him that defiant. He had some balls on him, excuse me, but I don't know. What do you think?
I think that would be a good angle because he is an extremely religious person, and as his personal views, I find many of them to be abhorrent, but I've never really found any fault with him upholding the Constitution or the rule of law.
Yeah, no, that's
where I get worried about somebody. Yeah, where I get worried about somebody like Pence is that, sure, he upholds the rule of law, but when you look, your personal ideology drives what you pursue and what you're interested in, and so those kinds of personal things come into view when, where do you want to try and steer things, and what kind of laws do you want to actually get on the books, so then you can then uphold them. So that's where those come in. But as far as the rules of laws that we have now, he's been pretty good about upholding them.
Well,
it was a very good thing. I was very happy to see them see him come up and come out against this, because especially after what Trump did in Portland, and the fact that we didn't hear really much of a peep out of anybody in the administration or concern about this, and my quote unquote my side of the ideological split seemed to encourage and was happy about it.
Oh, we lost you there. You there? Your sound profile has changed dramatically. I can hear you again, which is good.
Bring about there being a tyrannical government taking over here. Just going to let them do whatever you want. You're going to support it the whole way. It's like, wake up and look around at what's actually going on.
All right. At least for me, your sound profile has changed dramatically, and you all of a sudden sound very distant. And I heard some background noise, so I'll give you a second to work on that. One of the things that you had said, and I thought this was very interesting, which is the foresight to realize that any power that you give an administration while you are in power, your opponents will have when they get in power. So you have to be a little careful dipping too much into the box there, because the other side's going to have it when the wheel comes around. I think that's an interesting. I think that's a very good point. So are you still there? Do we still have you? And just trying to. All right, we may have lost his Andring, and so I will keep going until. Yeah. So he's So, all right. Now this is going to lead to the next thing, which was kind of, there was a, yeah, and we do have, again, and I think he's dropped. Thank you very much. So, and again, that impeachment video, I already knew a decent amount of about impeachment. I didn't realize how little I knew about impeachment until we did that episode. So I think I enjoyed that episode, and I think anybody who really wants to understand the process and really important parts of the process that are going to come into play over the next few days, that's a good video, and in my view is one of the ones in terms of an educational video that's enjoyable but is also really informative. That is probably one of our best shows. So and I believe we have him back. I think he cut out there, but oh, yep. Okay. Okay, cool. I forgot he can text on the back end. So perfect. So I did hear him reconnect. So is Andring, are you there? All right. I'll keep going forward. So let's see. Here's the sort of the concern. Okay. So you have a man who, to the best of my knowledge, really does believe that the Constitution is the divine and inspired word of God. And there are plenty of people who believe this. Since I don't know any, well, I've met plenty and I've debated more than a few, but I don't know any personally. I don't have any in my close circle of friends. It can be hard for me to believe this. It was hard until I met them. But it is a bigger percentage of the population than most of us know. It is much more common south of the Mason-Dixon line. Oh, hold on, I may have heard something. Are you there? No. It's much bigger south of the Mason-Dixon line. And they're around. Now, Pence is one of these people. The Founding Fathers, God essentially was aiding them to build the perfect union, the United States, which probably is going to herald, I think he's a Christian Zionist, and those guys are scary. Those guys are scary because they want the end of the world, and they're okay with war in the Middle East. In fact, they kind of want it because the sooner there's war in the Middle East, sooner Jesus comes back and we can stop suffering here and go on to where we're supposed to be in heaven. And I mean, the people who believe that are dangerous for that reason. And I get a little nervous when they get, admittedly, the nuclear launch codes, but he wouldn't be the first Christian Zionist we've had as president if he became so. Now, at any rate, because he believes that the Constitution is essentially the inspired word of God, what that means is Trump, to whom he has been immensely loyal, and he has allowed himself to look the buffoon because he's actually a very smart guy, and he was really good in the Senate, and he was a respected senator. He has allowed himself to look the buffoon more than once in support of Trump. And then Trump throws him under the bus and says he's a coward because he won't go against the, there isn't a settings tab, yeah. He won't go against the Constitution, which was always a red line. I mean, again, that's like going against God depends, not going to happen. So, which again, I find reassuring. If the Democrats win a 99% majority across all the houses of government, guess what he's going to do? He's going to certify the vote. So I do find that reassuring. So what happened yesterday? We have some idea, and I do believe I think he's connecting one more time. Is Andrew, you there? One, two. No,
yeah,
I don't think. Oh, there he is.
Yeah, that worked.
Perfect. All right. So I'm talking about Pence believing in the Constitution as the inspired word of God, and I think that it never crossed his mind not to certify the vote, and he did it. And then I think he got thrown under the bus by Trump, who said, "Hey, he's a coward for not overthrowing the will of the American voter." And that really hurt Pence. And the reports were that Pence was actually very upset by that. And I forget who was the congressman who reported that, but there were talks, and he was upset because he supported Trump. But what Trump was asking him to do was so far beyond the pale, and also probably an act of sedition. So that brings us to what happened at how to get into the order of these things. What I'm going to do is the next thing that ties to this, and I want to get to the Capitol Police, but the next thing that ties into this, after the Capitol building fell, there was a very interesting and reasonably concerning period of time. And those of you who were watching live yesterday will remember, I think, where we had just had Pence come out and be called a coward. And the reason he was a coward was for actually not following the Constitution and not protecting democracy by following the will of the American voter and failing to overthrow the election. That was essentially what he said on Twitter before his Twitter account was suspended. Then the press secretary of the the White House comes out and says, "We have sent troops, National Reserve." National Guard, to D.C. to support, and let me get the actual, okay, so the actual, let me get the actual, because I have it here. Yes, National Guard deployed. It was at President Donald Trump's direction. The National Guard is on the way with other Federal Protection Services. That's redacted. Oh, okay. It may be, that's a redacted version, and it's interesting what's been redacted there. All right, and what's missing there is something to the effect of to protect patriots and to protect, and I forget what it is, so I'm going to see if we can get an actual full version of it. But my concern was, at the time, the people he was calling patriots were the ones who were the, quote, protesters who had now overrun the Congress of the United States. And those were the patriots. And the congressmen, the ones who were betraying the country, which is how a dictator talks, and reminds me, and as Andrew, I'm sure you're going to, when we talked about Pinochet. I mean, we are back. You and I are back. Do you realize we've had this conversation before? We are back where we were.
Yes, this is starting to sound a little familiar.
This is our Pinochet discussion. And I almost had Pinochet on the cover of that one, and I thought it was a little too far, and now I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go back and put Pinochet on the thumbnail. We just decided to have a woman with a hood over her head because of extreme rendition and just kidnapping people off the streets. But yeah, this is every time we want to talk about the failure of the government, we'll bring you on. So
yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
I want the government to have less power, so maybe some of these failures of the government won't be so damaging.
This will be your specialty.
Yeah.
So
God, I'm going to be known for this, but nothing else.
Yeah.
This and the Second Amendment. Those are going to be the only two things I'm known for.
Anytime they see you on In Time in the future, they're like, "Oh God, what's happened now? What's on fire? What have we lost? How many branches of government still exist?" And the legislative branch is imploding, and I would like to get your opinion. I'm sorry for just talking so much, but I want to try to cover this because it's a lot, and then talk about it. But I want to make sure everyone's on the same page. So, it was unclear, and at first I was iffy on the unclear. And I know that when I was sent some of these DMs, it was actually to discuss another issue about the Capitol Police, which we will get into. But I realized it's unclear to me. It's just like, between a Twitter statement that had been done by the press secretary, because that's the best way to release to discuss national policy in the middle of a crisis and what appears to be an insurrection. And the president of the United States, I was like, it almost kind of looks like he's saying that the National Guard is being deployed on the side of the protesters to protect the protesters. Now, I said this as a joke, and then I was just like, it's actually not that funny because there's a possibility it's true. I don't know what he's saying here. I do not know who they have been deployed for. I don't. It's not clear to me. And what we've learned since is the mass resignations started when people viewed his response to the fall of the Capitol building. And he was described as giddy, and he was described as elated and feeling vindicated that he had won the election. Apparently, this changes the reality of who won. And it was shortly after that point that the National Guard was called in by the president. And keep in mind, the National Guard was called twice. They were later called by Pence, but they were called by Trump first to the tune of 1,100 guardsmen. So he was described as giddy. He calls in the National Guard, and it's unclear to me on which side he calls them in on. It turns out he was giddy, and shortly after this, anybody associated with Trump at that time starts to resign. I find this concerning. Am I the only one who's looking at it that way? Are you still there? This is what happens when I talk too much. Is Andrew?
No.
Okay.
I have to remember, because I'm out in the wilds, so I don't have a controlled studio. So when you're going through describing things, I try to mute myself, and then I forget that I'm muted, and I start talking, and nobody can hear me. Probably better that way. No, it's not. I mean, those people are those closest to Trump, and would ostensibly have a lot more information than all the rest of us peons out here. And so when you see, the administration literally kind of blow apart and people start running away, you realize that, okay, shit has really hit the fan at this point, because they're no longer trying to stick together. They're not trying to come up with a coordinated defense or face to present to the nation. It's like, okay, peace, I'm out of here. This has just gone bat-stock crazy, and I'm gone. That I can't. Whether it's in self-preservation, whether they're trying to preserve any kind of future political careers, whether they're just trying to avoid prosecution at a future date. When you start getting people like that abandon ship, you realize that things have gone seriously wrong.
Well, and even his own ex-chief of staff, John Kelly, who is profoundly, he is respected, is saying he needs to be removed now. We're not waiting. Don't wait the time. Remove him. And it looks like somebody, I don't know who, but it looks like legal counsel and or people reasonably experienced with this sort of thing have gone to basically everybody inside the White House and said, do not talk to Trump under any set of circumstances. And aside from the previous day's possible election tampering and I forget what was the other. Election tampering is the light one. It looks like he's in serious trouble for going to the Secretary of State and saying, hey, nudge, nudge, can you find a couple of 1,000 extra votes? He's already in trouble for that. And what they're saying is it looks like he's going to be on the hook for sedition, for inciting violence, inciting sedition. It looks like he's going to be on the hook for a lot of things. And, even if you're innocent, every time you talk to him, you're going to need, for every word you say, an extra $1,000 per hour of legal time to justify and defend yourself against. So do not speak to him under any circumstances. Now, that's what we hear, and I suspect is true. They've been told, and they're like, "We're out of here."
Yeah, I don't doubt that at all. I mean, there comes a point where you have to go, I need to cover my ass on this stuff. I mean, this is unprecedented. You know, I think there was like maybe one other time in history where there wasn't a very smooth transition, but we've always transferred power. Even if they were, saying mean, nasty things on their way out, they still went out. And that doesn't appear to be what Trump's trying to accomplish now. I mean, that call was very damning, and I can't believe that he would have done something like that in an era where pretty much everything could be picked up and recorded, that he would come out and be that blatant about it.
Yeah, well, he doesn't. I think he is disconnected from reality. I think there is a little senility kicking in. I don't think he's like fully off his rocker, but I think he started a ways ago. But I'm not sure that's, I don't.
The only thing I can think of is that maybe he thought he would actually be successful in this, and if he could pull it out and remain president, then it wouldn't have mattered if he got caught doing that, because he could have just pardoned himself or whatever. And that's the only thing I can think of that makes reasonable sense. But I've kind of, especially over the past year, I've really kind of stopped considering things with reason when it comes to Trump, because there's been a lot of things that just don't make any sense. It's like, I can't really believe you did that. Don't you have people that are there to stop you from doing stupid shit?
Well, and of course, you have to keep in mind, it's a state crime, which he can't pardon. So he's going to have a problem there too.
Yeah, but I don't think he knows that.
I know
I
he
really
doesn't
don't
know
think
that.
he's...
I fucking know for a fact he does not know that. He's the president of the United States, and he doesn't know the difference between local jurisdiction, state jurisdiction, and federal jurisdiction.
I don't think he even really knew how the government itself worked before he was elected. I still don't think he knows how the government works.
Well, he's about to find out how the federal prison system works, I think. I'm sorry. I hope. I don't know.
We
Who
can,
the hell
we
knows?
can start
anything anymore.
We can start an end-time fund to make some customized rope on a string. Soap on a rope. Jeez, I butchered the hell out of that. And we can put it in there and, have it stamped into the surface with, regards, end time. Mail it to him.
You know what? I like that. I'm on board. I'm on board. Yeah, I like that. I do. I like that. I am now. That is, I think that's going to be a thing. It wouldn't be the craziest thing we've done. So, by any stretch, unfortunately.
It's so sad too, because, it's like even some of I really got politically active and got really interested in politics fairly late in my life. Well, I say that like I'm ancient, and I'm really not. But, earlier, even when I was in the military, I didn't give a crap about what the government was doing. And so I wasn't really on board for what, or politically active or paying attention to what was going on during the Bush administration. What really got me interested was Barack Obama's run. That's what really got me interested, because it was very, very interesting. And it's like, okay, now we actually have there's a black man running for president. He's actually the actual nominee. That's what really started sucking me in and starting to pay attention to what goes on, politically. And I've since looked back at some of the actions of previous presidents, and it's like I don't know that I actually really agreed with any of the Republican presidents. And then Trump comes along, and I'm like, well, I don't like Trump, and I also really don't like Hillary. Not saying she's not qualified, because she's, but I didn't particularly want career politicians anymore.
Yeah.
And, because the career politicians, you're going to kind of get the same thing you've been getting. And it's like, clearly that's not actually really working for our country very well. It's not disastrous, but it's not really working. And if we want to start fixing some of these problems, we're going to have to start doing things differently, because nothing will change until you actually start doing things differently. And so that election, I was shocked that Trump won, and I was not happy that he won the nomination to begin with. And being in a state that was going to reliably go to Hillary Clinton, I was like, I'm sick and tired of not having more options than just this. So I voted for Gary Johnson, who was more closely aligned to what I'd like the federal government to look like anyway. Although he's got some outside ideas that I think are kind of wacky as well. But I wanted more options, so I voted for more options. So I've never seen or even read about in all of the research that I got interested in, politics, anything like Trump, and especially since the election has just completely melted down. And I'm constantly going, what? Wait, that happened? No, no. You got to be kidding me. This has got to be The Onion, not real life.
Yeah. Oh, and there was more than once when. Okay, so we basically I have access to two chats here. I have the front end chat where we can see what's going on. I say hi to people if I can. Usually can't because the show's busy, but I see what's going on usually. And the back end chat where certain people can contact me either with news or whatever. And every now and then I'd get some news, and I looked at it. I was like, oh, that's kind of funny, but it doesn't belong here during a live show because even though it's funny, I'm busy. And they're like, no, that's serious. And I was just like, it really. Please tell me this is a joke. Like, no, it's serious. And I was just like, I have to.
Yeah,
really?
There's been. Oh yeah, it's been. This was a really bad time to have my truck break down and not pay attention to what was going on in the world.
I know all the time. Well, so
even after the election.
Yeah.
Oh, even after the election, when Trump said he was going to challenge all of these things, and I'm like, okay, I don't actually really have a problem with that. There are legal procedures that you can go through if you think that something was wrong, and I do believe that we should investigate allegations of voter fraud, voter irregularities, because that is kind of a fundamental bedrock to our democracy, our republic, is confidence in our voting system. If you don't have that, then you don't really have a democracy. You don't have a republic.
Yes.
So I'm fine with all of that. And I was like, it'll go through the courts. They'll find out. From all of the news sources that I've found that I find at least somewhat credible, that aren't like extremist on one side or the other, have all kind of agreed that look, there isn't much evidence to support widespread voter fraud. That there probably are some instances. They'll probably find some irregularities, etc.
Yes,
but it won't be anywhere close to the numbers that would be needed to overturn the election.
Yes.
So I figured it'd just kind of work its way through the things. Donald Trump would keep on with his rhetoric. I really actually won, and all voter fraud, blah blah blah. I did not expect it to melt down like this. I've kind of figured that he would see the writing on the wall, realize that these are just kind of last-ditch efforts that aren't really going to succeed, and we would just move on. And that is not happening at all.
Well, it looks like it's kind of sort of starting to, and I don't know if that is going to slow anybody down. I think there's going to be, if the 25th Amendment isn't invoked by close of business tomorrow, articles of impeachment will be on the floor. I have little doubt, and they're already fast-tracking that, so the articles of impeachment can go to the floor. Let me quickly read a super chat. Excuse me. Jake 48 for $5. Thank you, Jake, once again so much. Thank you very much for your support, your continuing support. $5. Career politicians may not be wanted, but inexperienced politicians are truly disastrous. And you and I have discussed this as Andring, and I want to hit it. I don't want to linger on it too long, and it's probably worth a show. I mean, I do like the idea that you shouldn't have career politicians. Everybody has term limits. They come in for a little while, and that seems to be closer to what the Founding Fathers wanted. On the flip side, when you start talking about how to deal with some of the intricacies of an interconnected global economy, a global, healthcare system, interconnected healthcare system where, we've got a flu that's affecting everybody. The one thing that career politicians do have over everybody else is they do understand the system, and usually, at a minimum, my job is to, I run the show, or I write books, or I teach, or whatever it is I'm doing, their job is to become educated on the issues and make the best decisions possible. So, Adam, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm not a there. I mean, there's a difference between having people with experience in certain fields, being knowledgeable about certain fields, and being qualified to be in a governmental position, and then there's people like Dianne Feinstein or Nancy Pelosi or Chuck Schumer or Bernie Sanders that have spent their entire lives doing nothing but being in federal office and didn't have much in the way of accomplishment before they became politicians. I mean, granted, they built up experience in dealing with governmental policies, etc., but they haven't really spent much time living in the real world. And I truly believe that leaves people kind of out of the loop as to what the average American's life is really like, and what kinds of issues that they care about and concern them and affect them. And it was the founders' intentions to have citizen politicians. The politicians weren't supposed to be, lifetime. They weren't supposed to be there for their life. They're supposed to. It wasn't even supposed to be a full-time job. You were supposed to, kind of what we did on the weekends type of thing. And it does create some. If you get clearly, like if you get somebody like Trump, who isn't a politician really at all, you can see how badly it can go. But I think that there were very clear signs that Trump was going to be a horrible president right from the get-go, and just in his campaign. Just listen to what the man said. And yet, he still got elected, but.
I've been known to be a little snarky and to think I'm a little more clever than I actually am. And I've been known to pull shenanigans to try to prove that point. Super chat, $10 from his Andering Person. I just didn't feel my voice was being heard enough. Honestly,
I shouldn't be snarky on a serious.
It's okay, and I've been a little bit more, and we've gone detracted because there is one thing I want to do. But honestly, truth be told, though, you've always been immensely supportive of this show, and we really appreciate it. I know it's there have been times when it's been really easy for you, and you've been supportive, and there have been times when it hasn't, and you've still been as supportive as you can, and it's just been amazing. And we have appreciated it, and I personally do. And I appreciate snark, but I also can't not just pretend like you're annoying the living daylights out of me, despite the fact I appreciate it. So thank you. So thank you, Andering Person. And okay, so it sounds like you were taking breath to say something. So if you want to say it, and then I want to hit the biggest issue I think for tonight.
You can go on.
Okay. So we started to talk about it, but I realized I don't think I framed it in terms of the severity, and I think so we've got him on. It looks like we got him on election fraud, a whole bunch of other stuff. He's got tax issues. This guy has more legal problems than just. I mean, he is. We passed Nixon. We are at Al Capone level of problems for him now. So here's my thing. We started taking bets as a joke, and if I had time, I would have put up a poll. Which side have the 100 and 1,100 troops been ordered to? Are they protecting Congress? Or are they protecting the protesters? And I'm just saying protesters because that's what they were being called at the time. And at first, I ballparked it at about 30%. I was just like, okay, you know what? I thought this was a joke, but realistically speaking, I cannot eliminate the possibility that he sent them there to protect the protesters, the patriots, in his view. And as we've learned more about the attitude of the president during this crisis, and that he in fact felt vindicated, he was giddy. He had called Vice President Pence a coward for basically flying in the face of the Constitution, for not overturning the vote. Here are people who want to overturn the vote, so they are patriots in his eyes, and based on how it was framed by his Secretary of State, they are going out there to protect patriots. I'm sitting there going, well, wow, that really depends on what you call that could be Congress, and that could be Shortly thereafter, and this is shortly thereafter, the Department of Defense released a press release in which they said that, working in conjunction with a few other people, but Mike Pence and a few other people, they are deploying all of the D.C. National Guard. Here's why that's important. Mike Pence cannot deploy the National Guard. He has two powers, really. Well, just the one biggie power is his only real power is he's got a superpower. The president has loads of superpowers, right? The president is commander in chief, so he can say, "Army, go there. Army, go there. Army, invade these people. Let's go murder these people." He's got loads of really cool superpowers. The vice president can't let himself into the building. The president needs to say, "Yeah, you can let him in." You know, the president authorizes the vice president. But if they say they don't want him in the building, now they can't keep him out of the Senate because he's the president of the Senate. But they can keep him out of the White House if they want to. He's got one power, and that is to become president if the president is dead or incapacitated. He can become president. That's his superpower. He can't do anything else. He can eeny, meeny, miny, mo, you win in a tie. That's it. So, and that's a misconception because people think the vice president's a really powerful position. It's not. It's extraordinarily weak. So what you have is all of a sudden the United States military, the DOD, issuing a statement that they're taking orders from the vice president. Now, I'm not entirely terrified and shocked because if he's empowered to speak for the president, it's still technically not like the direct legit, but they do that. You sometimes take, but in this case, they're being ordered to go into the Capitol building. I wouldn't do that unless I received the order from the president himself. I don't care which side I was ordered on. So here's the question. The president orders 1,100 troops to do something, and we now do not know what it was. We just know they were going there, and it's extraordinarily unclear what it was. We then know at some point it appears like they were actually recalled or told to stand by until the rest of the military, the rest of the National Guard deployed, and then they'd all get together and they'd act together. So they were not empowered to act separately. Whatever the president ordered seems to have been rescinded. And then Pence was put in charge, and people caught this. They're like, wait a minute, why are they taking orders from Pence today of all days with this happening? So they asked the DOD, is Pence the person who authorized this? The answer is yes. That suggests strongly to me that, and there's evidence against my position, I'll give it in a minute, but that suggests strongly to me that what happened is Trump said, oh, wow, it's chaos down there, and we want the violence to stop. We do. We want the violence to stop. I'm sending 1,000 troops down there to protect the protesters who are getting shot by the Capitol Police. It wasn't the Capitol Police, but the Sergeant at Arms or whoever else was down there. Like, we're gonna protect those patriots. And then everybody said this is insane because those people, everybody who was present in the White House for that is resigning. So they said this is insane. They start resigning en masse. Somebody speaks to Trump and says, and it may have been Pence, I don't know who, members of the cabinet, you're going to go to Mar-a-Lago and you're going to take a day off. If you say anything else, if you do anything else, the cabinet's going to meet, the 25th is going to get invoked, and you will be president for about 3 hours longer, and that's how long it's going to take us to get it through Congress. And they're wherever they're sheltering, they'll vote for it. Said, and you're done. So either you go now, and we're taking the military. You go, you shut your mouth, and you stay out of it, and then we're going to fix things, and we're going to say, oh, thank God for Trump who fixed everything. You can take the credit, but today, you're done. Pence takes over the military of the United States effectively, not on paper, and I think they realized it because they're listening to him now, despite orders from Trump. And then all of a sudden, the military goes in and gets things under control there. That's what I'm seeing. Now, you've been in the military. You know a little bit. You know a lot about that aspect more than I do. You certainly know a lot about this. What on earth, does that make any sense to you?
Yes, and I believe that's probably likely what happened.
All right.
And whether Now the question, it's really going to be a question about what exactly did Trump order the National Guard to do. But in order, one of the things one of the reasons I believe that you're probably at least close to accurate is the military is pretty strict about its chain of command.
Yes.
And for them to take orders from Pence tells me that the orders Trump gave violated something to do with the Constitution. That he gave unlawful orders.
Well,
and they are, one of the oaths that you take in the military is to uphold the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And that domestic part's kind of important. So if he's giving unlawful orders, at that point, it's like he's already the highest person up there. So now what do? Well, you have to go to the next highest person and figure something out.
Well, so now here's the question that I get asked when I talk about this. Isn't he the commander-in-chief? They have to do what he says, right?
No, they do not have to do what he says. They must follow all lawful orders from those appointed over them.
All right. So they have to do. Yes, please.
Oh, it specifically, the oath specifically says, and I will obey all lawful orders of those appointed above me. I'm pulling that out of a 20-year-old memory, but I'm pretty sure that's close to a direct quote of the oath that you take when you're enlisted, and the officers take a similar oath. So, you are not required to follow unlawful orders from a superior if they are unlawful orders.
Well, and if they're unconstitutional, you're required to disobey. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right.
You are obligated, and you have taken an oath to uphold the Constitution. And if an order violates the Constitution, that makes it an unlawful order.
Okay. So what it seems now, nobody's talking about this, and the only counter that I've got to this, and I am sold on the fact that this is what happened. The only counter I've got to this now, and I have one more piece of evidence, which is too many people. I understand why people are leaving but okay, here's the thing. The biggie from yesterday is that he was fomenting violence, right? He was really suggesting that people should be violent. That's a problem. That's a very big problem, but I can't fathom that that's enough that people don't want to touch him, that he's toxic. That's defensible. If you're a criminal defense attorney, you can spin that. It's not good. But you can sit there and say, that's not what he meant. No, you were totally, listen, he said go home. He said this was beautiful what we did, right? But he said go, no. But if he actually said protect the protesters that have just conquered the Capitol building, there's no spinning that. You can sit there and say, you can question motives or whatever, but if that's on paper and he did that, that strikes me as, and I forget what the term is, but I mean, aside from holy shit. Hold on one sec. There we are. I mean, that's a staggering thing. That is the president of the United States supporting protesters who are by this point called terrorists, local. They've now been branded, and I think probably justly so. Domestic terrorists and I'm sorry, I forgot that, but engaging in insurrection and or sedition against the United States. And what did he do? He, by this scenario, we don't know, but by this hypothetical that I'm looking at and I see, he said to the National Guard, protect them. So we have a couple of people that I want to hypothetically look at and see, what do you do if you're them? The first is, okay, if you're in his administration, what do you do? And I think the answer is you quit. So I think that's why we're seeing these mass everybody jumping aboard. I think just the fomenting violence. Okay, he's done crazy shit before, and while this is a bit more than the number of people who are bailing, I think that's what he did, and I think that is irrefutably a huge line, well above even just fomenting violence. I mean, okay. My wife has been trying to get me to shut up and not say anything for 25 years. I can't talk when I think about that. So that aside, okay, you're the head of the National Guard at the DOD, or you're in the DOD. You now see it, probably whoever first got the orders was like, okay, it's the president of the United States, and they just kind of said, okay, and they sent the troops over there. But now you're the DOD, you see this coming. What do you do? And then Mike Pence says, so what are you thinking? How are you trying to get out of it? What do you think is going on?
Likely, the people next to him, in his cabinet or that were there with him, that all decided to resign. That really is about the only thing they can do. When you move over to the head of the National Guard, and he gets these orders, and then they start getting an idea of what's actually going on, and then Pence comes out and says, "Hey, no, you're going to take orders from me. This is what's going to happen." The National Guard leader probably talked to something like the members of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He actually went to the real military and asked them, "What do I do?" Because they're all right there in D.C. So that wouldn't have been a hard thing for them to work with. I doubt that he just he probably got some sort of counsel on what do I do in this situation.
Well, they started going, so that makes sense. So he probably followed the order, but then said, there's something wrong. He goes, and then I would imagine somebody goes to Pence then. Somebody's like, I'd like to let you see and let you to tell you what's going on. We're having an interesting day here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I doubt that he probably just went, "Oh, well, we're just not going to do that. That's an unlawful order." I'm sure, especially when you start getting higher, when you're lower, things get a little bit less complicated, because you have somebody, like, say you have an officer gives an enlisted person, a lower ranked enlisted person, an order. Generally, they're just going to follow it, unless it's like a blatant unlawful order, such as, "I want you to pull your sidearm and kill this man." So there are definitely some orders that can be given, and then you have a duty to not comply with an order like that, but you need to start following a chain of command someplace, and usually it starts above whoever gave you that order that was clearly an unlawful order. But when you start getting higher, now you start getting a lot more political, and there's a lot more responsibility, and there's a lot more involved. And when you get to like the head of the National Guard, they're going to start going over to like the real Army, and the Joint Chiefs of Staff are going to talk to the Secretary of the Navy, they're going to talk to the General of the Army, etc. And they're going to go, "What the hell do I do? This seems unlawful to me. I'm being given an order from the Commander-in-Chief." And they would probably say, "Okay, well, is it or not?" And then they would figure out some sort of game plan. But I doubt that he acted, unilaterally and on his own, which would probably, is at least reflected in the fact that there did seem to be some confusion about who was actually controlling the National Guard and why they had two different sets of orders.
Well, that's the thing. When you see two different sets of orders, that's when you see. And again, that's what happens when you start to get an attempt to overthrow the government. You start getting multiple sets of orders from different people who think they're in charge. Trump was starting to suggest, "I'm in charge," and Congress isn't. And Congress is trying to certify an election which was fake, and I won. And now these people have thrown Congress literally out of office. Sorry, I didn't mean that as a joke, but I was halfway done. I was just like, okay, it wasn't metaphorically. They threw them out of office. He's sending troops there. And then I realized at first we just don't know what he meant. And I thought, okay, that's just ambiguity. There's some ambiguity, especially when when you conduct national policy on Twitter, there's going to be some fucking ambiguity. That's why Twitter isn't the best medium for telling a country what the fuck is going on. I think there was definitely some confusion, and the only time there was any clarity was when Pence was put in charge, and they said, "This is what we're going to do. We're going to go down there. We're going to fix this. Everyone's going to go back to work, and everything's good." And I was like, okay, now I'm feeling better. But it looks like Pence is in charge to me.
Yeah, and like I said, somebody had mentioned in the live chat, I try to watch it and listen to you at the same time, and usually the live chat ends up being more important than what you happen to be saying. But somebody had mentioned how is a inferior, I hate to say inferior, how is a lower ranked person supposed to know if an order is lawful or not? Well, much like in the regular civilian world, we have something called the UCMJ, which is the Unified Code of Military Justice, and that lines out what lawful orders are, what you are obligated to do. And so, if an officer were to give an order that contradicted the UCMJ, that would be an unlawful order, and you are not obligated to follow. As a matter of fact, you're not supposed to follow an unlawful order. And and if you're a lower ranked person, like a lower enlisted, you are supposed to go up through your local chain and try and figure out what the problem is. But when you get up to, you start dealing with people that are like admirals, generals, etc. They know very well what lawful orders are, because that's part of their job, because they give orders. They have to know exactly what a lawful order is. They need to know what they can and cannot order to be done. And those are usually all laid out by, the Department of Defense, the very heads of the Department of Defense, and then, of course, the president approves a lot of those things. But when you come to a point where the president, the commander-in-chief, is giving what you believe to be unlawful orders, that in itself has got to cause quite a lot of chaos and confusion of going, what the hell do I do? I believe this to be unlawful, yet it's the commander-in-chief. Generally you try and kick problems like that up the chain and let them figure it out. And
please.
With the kind of confusion that they had, with the kind of confusion they have, and the fact that they did different things, and it didn't seem to work quite so nicely as you would expect them to. They didn't seem to be unified in what was going on. That's why I think that what you laid out was at least a likely scenario of what really happened. I don't know if we're ever going to find out exactly, but
I think we are. Well, that's the only argument against it having happened, and I'll get into that in a second. But I do think this was the only really hilarious moment. Was I was listening yesterday, so we talked about this, and I said, right now it appears like Trump is acting like Pence is. I mean, he's got the powers of the presidency, from what I can tell, and that's stunning. And they're half admitting it. They're basically half admitting it. And so we're trying to sort this, and then all of a sudden, of course, he's certifying the vote. And as he's certifying the vote, one of the senators turned to Pence and said, "Mr. President, I hereby certify that." And I was just, whoa, let's clarify, just for the people watching. He's president of the Senate. That they call him Mr. President. He has it. There's one or two of the left are like, oh, okay, good. That's just like, yeah, we're not there yet. It's not 25 yet. Let's be clear. It's that cray. So we're going to talk about Pelosi because she's upset, and a lot of people are upset, and there are a lot of reasons, and some that people have considered, some maybe they haven't. But I want to get into this. So the two things is, first of all, if that is what has happened, that's treason. The people have committed a massive assault on one branch of government. They've successfully overthrown the Capitol building, and he goes in to send in people to protect those that have done it. That, in my view, is treason. So I think he's in extraordinary trouble if that has happened. I don't think anyone would want to talk about it, and I think people would be scared and terrified. On the other hand, when we're scared and terrified, most of us get diarrhea of the mouth. It's very hard to not talk about it, and the fact that we've had so many people resign, and people who were there to see it, and reports that he was giddy, that he was enjoying himself. It was like, yay, they've just overthrown Congress. So that fact suggests to me that, okay, this happened, but the fact that there isn't even a rumor that somebody in a back channel said this happened, when things get this chaotic, it's normally very hard to hold on to a secret. When it's this chaotic, it's even harder. So Nancy Pelosi is pushing, in my view, as if she believes that's what happened. When I see Nancy Pelosi saying, that's it, he's done, get him out now, which is what she's saying. And when I see all these other people, which is why when people tell me that Pence may not do it, no, people are telling me it's unlikely Pence would pull the trigger. I strongly disagree. I think if he knows he's got the votes, Pence will pull the trigger, end of discussion. I have almost no doubt in my mind. But he won't do it if he doesn't know for certain he's got the votes. If there's any ambiguity, he won't do it because he doesn't want to go down as the man who tried to overthrow a U.S. president. Doesn't matter if he was right. Doesn't matter if he was right. He will go down in history as basically the first vice president who tried to overthrow the president of the United States. So he's going to wait because the history is written by the victor, and he does not want to lose this one. So right now, he's probably. I think he's got enough votes in. I think he's got enough votes in the cabinet. I think he's got enough votes in the cabinet. He needs only half. Now, every time he loses a member of the cabinet, I'm curious to know what that does to the math. The math gets a little tricky, but I think he's got enough in the cabinet. I think he's got enough in the House. The question is, does he have enough in the Senate? And I don't think anybody knows. And I think if somebody came up to him and they said, there's an 80% chance it'll pass in the Senate, he won't do it. If they said there's a 90% chance it'll pass in the Senate, he won't do it. If you said there's a 98% chance it'll pass in the Senate, he'd think about it. And if he knew it would pass in the Senate, it's done. It's done. And I'm going to use the same argument as to why it didn't even cross his mind not to certify the vote. If Trump did what we think he did, Pence wants him out now. But Pence won't pull the trigger unless he knows he's going to get it right, because Pence is fucking smart. And he knows he doesn't want to be on the wrong side of this, and it's not worth it for the extra 12 days you're getting him out of office. Now, that's my theory. Any thoughts?
I think I agree that he's not going to try and stick his neck out without some just reason to believe that he's going to succeed. Because that would kind of, even if he was right to have done it, or at least to have attempted it, it would still essentially be political suicide if he doesn't succeed at doing it.
Yes.
So yeah, I think that I do agree with that, and I honestly believe that there's a bunch of kind of behind closed doors wrangling going on with Trump's, essentially trying to convince him to stop anything and just go away until this is all over. And maybe they're threatening him with this, maybe they're trying to set all this stuff up. But I would think that they would be trying to solve something out of the public eye so that they don't look any worse than they already do.
All right. Well, and so we had a question. I think this is important. So right now, it looks like all law enforcement agencies that are involved in any way with any of this, it's all hands on deck. They have already identified a number of people who were involved yesterday, and they've said that they're going to prosecute everyone they can find. Fortunately, a number of these people, and this is going to come as a shock, are extraordinarily fucking stupid. And some of them were streaming this to Facebook Live, which makes it a lot easier to identify who was involved. A number of them have actually already been identified by social media. They've been fired. They've lost their jobs, which is, frankly, I'm not impressed. That's not, we are a little past the, well, they lost their job for what they did, so social media has had justice. But at least it's a start, and what that presumably means is they're being identified. But prosecutors have said that they are, quote, looking at all actors, including President Trump, in what happened, and that they are going to be filing charges against all the rioters, everyone who was involved at any level. So right now they appear to be taking this seriously, and there's another reason they're taking this seriously, which it's a cynical reason, but it's true. Again, I'll probably get to that in a minute. But I think if my theory is correct, and it's just the best that fits the facts, I have to believe would have heard a whispering of it somewhere, and the fact that we haven't, but we've heard so many leaks, it just seems to me that's the only evidence against it. It doesn't mean it didn't happen, but I'm just sitting there going, we haven't heard anyone say anything. So I planted the flag that that's my view on what happened. But that's it. So, and that's staggering. That means that Pence was in charge. The military accepted him as in charge, and everyone's like, no, Trump, we're not doing it. And the easiest way that also makes sense is if he gave a unlawful order, an unconstitutional order, and essentially tried to hand Congress over to seditionists, which I think probably violates a few codes of federal law. I'm thinking, not a lawyer. We haven't.
Maybe one or two obscure ones.
The other ones, well, actually, they are obscure, to be honest. Because when was the last time anybody had to look up, treason committed by the president?
Yeah, when was the last time anybody had to attend a workshop on what do you do as the head of the National Guard when the commander-in-chief gives you an unlawful order?
Can you imagine?
Because,
Okay, so this is the new training that they have to do now at the White House, right? The interns come in now. If the President of the United States decides that he's going to commit treason, you have a couple options available to you. And immediately, what you should start to do is, like, if he's going to try to overthrow the government and incite a rebellion against the lawful government, we suggest you, oh, dear Lord, you can grab a 9mm and, oh, my God. I do want to say, and we had been talking yeah, please.
Oh, I mean, it's like we crack little jokes like that, and it's like it's an extremely serious situation. I mean, there hasn't been a challenge to the rule of law in this country this serious since pretty much the Civil War, at least on a federal level like this. There's definitely been some challenges to the rule of law, like during the civil rights protests and things. So there have been areas where there have been challenges, but it's never been like at the top of the federal government type challenges.
Yeah.
And so it's incredibly serious, and it really sets a tone. And of course, the more this happens in public or is in the public domain, the worse it looks for everybody involved. And that was one of the things I was going to mention about. You said the one thing that kind of counters what your argument would be is that nobody has leaked anything about this.
Mm-hmm.
And while that's true, and it's a valid point to bring up, I would also say that probably anybody who would have the knowledge to be able to leak any of this stuff is probably trying to cover their ass big time right now. And so they're probably shut up and said, I am not saying a damn thing.
Well, I do think there's some truth to that.
Because they know lawsuits. Yeah, I mean, they know lawsuits are going to be flying after this. So I think they're in huge damage control mode. Protect yourself as much as you possibly can and shut the hell up.
Yep. All right. Well,
I'm not saying that is happening, but
yeah,
but would.
That's a fair.
If I was in that situation,
it's just enough people, and it's enough people who've already given us what his attitude was when the Capitol fell. It was just like to hear them reporting and to hear that they were genuinely. Betsy DeVos quit a half hour before we started the show. She has been one of his greatest supporters, not necessarily the most vocal, but and she's done. She's done. So it's sort of like, what's she hearing and what does she know? If you are not directly connected with this, quitting is symbolic. And I understand that hey, I'm for the symbolic quitting and I hope they all quit, but this doesn't strike me like that kind of crew. So why is she bailing? And the only thing I can think of is because also as a member of the cabinet, she's sitting there talking and she's learning what's going on. And she also doesn't want to be put in the position of the fact that she's going to have to make that vote, knowing that if she votes no and it comes out that she knew and everybody knew what he's done, she's in trouble. If she votes yes, there's a significant portion of this country that's going to think she just committed treason by enforcing the will of the American voter.
it is a hell of a mess, is what it is.
Yeah. All right. Well,
I think
please.
we'll eventually get a better idea of all of the things that actually went on and actually happened. I do believe there's going to be quite a lot of lawsuits that end up flying around, possibly criminal charges for people. Trump is, in all of the actions that we actually know that he's done, he's already potentially facing criminal charges for those kinds of things, or at least he could be criminally charged for some of those things.
I think at this point there's reasons. He seems to be Teflon to some extent. There do appear to be people just don't want to prosecute him, but the reality is he is facing, like in Georgia, he is the state attorney general was crystal clear. This is serious. They're going after it. He will be facing charges. What happens, I don't know. He will be facing charges there. He's going to be facing charges from the Southern District at some point in New York. He's almost certainly going to be facing problems with he's going to be facing problems with the IRS, like 98% chance probability of that. And now he's going to be facing things with this, whatever. He's in holy smoke. Again, I wasn't kidding. Al Capone was facing fewer charges.
And And he went down for a lot less.
Yes.
I mean, because they couldn't prove a lot of the crap that he was doing, and
Yep.
they finally went after him instead of going after him, and for violent criminal acts. They got wise and decided they'd go after him for other things. It's like, doesn't really matter why you're in prison if you're going to be in prison.
Tax evasion.
So,
he was in jail for tax evasion, which, by the way, Trump is also on very much on the hook for, probably to the tune of several $100 million minimum. And I think at one count they were saying $500 million tax evasion, and possibly up as high as $2 billion. And Uncle Sam's going to want the money back, and they may want the money back from this one too. So there were reports when, and we had some confusion, but Trump, and this would suggest, and this was the other thing, there is some suggestion that Trump may have, and I have to believe this is a possibility, known more about this happening ahead of time than anyone else did. So I want to make another argument for the possibility, the strong possibility that some of this was, that this was essentially pre-planned. Here's why. Now, we had heard that there had been shots fired, and there was a report of possibly a gun battle, so we'd assumed that the protesters were armed. It's looking more and more like the vast majority at a minimum were not. They did have TAC gear, but they did not have offensive weaponry, from what I can tell at this point. That's also interesting, because for a group that always carries it, that's a message. I think they weren't carrying it explicitly because they were going to do something very dangerous, and they didn't want to be accused of. That's sort of like hey, I write. I meet interesting people. I was speaking with a guy who used to break into houses. And he said he would tell people when he was talking, he was in the mob, and he said when he was talking to people who were learning to break into houses, especially young kids, he goes, the problem, they always wanted to bring a gun. They just like to have a gun, that's all it is, and like for protection. It's like, what do you need protection for? You're breaking into the guy's house. And he's like, well, in case the guy wakes up. He goes, so what, you're going to kill him? You're now a murderer. You're going to go away from murder. He goes, oh, well, I'm just so I can get away. Well, the best way to get away is turn around and run. What do you need a gun for? It ain't going to make you faster. And it's like, so you don't ever carry a gun when robbing a house. And so I'm just like, oh, that's good to know. It's a pro tip. If you're robbing a house, don't ever bring a firearm, because it cannot help you.
There you have it.
Yeah. What?
Yeah, there you have it. All the faithful audience members of In Time has officially become pro tips for how to break the law.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks. Okay, so...
Coming
next
week,
time with Xandering.
if you want to get away with murder.
Oh, Jesus. Okay. I think we just lost him. Yeah. Oh, his mic is gone. Oh no, the connection's dead.
Oh yeah, I had another glitch with the thing and couldn't get into the settings to reset my headset. Yeah, that's what's happening.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's exactly what happened. Okay. So here's what we know. First of all, there were pictures of, and we saw this yesterday. There were pictures of Capitol police officers whose job it is to protect basically all of the people on Capitol Hill. So that's basically government, who were, yeah, okay. Oh, hold on. I have to, I'll donate super chat money for that comment. Aries 106. I always come to In Time for my robbery pro tips. Yeah. So I won't tell the other joke now, because I think we need to get moving. This is overtime, not in time, so I just try to stay on target, a little more task. So here's we saw pictures of the officers.
Oh, you should not have brought me on.
Yeah. Well, no, yeah, but you are right up the alley for what we need to talk about anyway. So I was just like, listen. I wanted to have a really good discussion, but Vox couldn't make it. So what I said was, you know what, we'll have an interesting intellectual discussion that, we'll probably end up getting into psychology and how and why of these things, and in a sensible way that would make a lot of sense. Marty couldn't make it either, so yeah, I called you. At any rate, let's see.
I'm like number 4 or 5 down the list of crap. I can't get this person, so we'll try this person, and I can't get this person, and then we'll look on the Discord, see if anybody's available. Then we'll
Yeah,
finally
yeah.
message Isander.
Yeah, 4 or 5. Yeah, let's go with
I'm
that.
desperate.
Let's say 4 or 5. I'm comfortable with that. That's what we're going to say.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
so you have these Capitol Hill officers who are in charge of security. So the first question was, how did they gain access so quickly? Now, the first reports that we had was there had been a gun battle, this and that, and all we found out later was it appears to have been only one shot that killed one person. Now, they were overwhelmed. They were overwhelmed by people who had no weapons. So the first question is, if they had no weapons, how come the Capitol Hill police couldn't repel them? And while I had made a lot of, and this is true, I mean, there's 500 of them, so you'd think repelling them is difficult. But the reality is, if you got 5 or 6 officers in a confined space like a hallway, and you shoot the first 6 or 7 coming in through the door, which you can do with that many officers and sidearms, I think people are going to reconsider coming through the door because you may have enough to do it. But the problem is somebody's got to be the first one through, and that person this is his last day on Earth. So they should have been able to, if these guys were unarmed, they should have been able to repel them. Instead, there's photos of the police taking selfies with these guys. And we're learning more and more that is very disturbing about this. There are accusations from both Pennsylvania state senators saying that their senator in Congress aided in this. And so we don't know what that means. Did he just help, erect the gallows in the thing? And he was just like, hey, everybody, and had no idea that they were going to go in. But it looks like what they were suggesting was he helped them get in the building. And maybe this was supposed to be a protest inside the building. I don't know. But if he helped them get in the building and he's a fucking senator, he's got a problem. But at any rate, somehow it looks like they gained access to the building very easily. It looks like the Capitol Police may have known they were coming and started taking selfies with them. So is that what you've heard? What have you heard? What are your opinions on what you've heard and seen so far?
A couple of things, especially that those buildings are usually better protected. I was a little surprised to find out, that they're saying, oh, well, there was only like 5 people trying to repel 500. And I'm like, wait, there were only 5 Capitol Police officers there? And especially when I don't understand why there weren't more there.
And on that day?
That was especially when the people started gathering. I mean, as soon as you started having a gathering outside, and I don't think that this was like a huge secret that they were going to gather outside. The fact that there weren't more Capitol Police there, also how quickly they got into the building. There didn't appear to be much in the way of resistance to them actually pouring in, and I'm not sure. Because on the one hand, I can see them saying, "Hey, look, if they're going to get rowdy, if they're going to try and storm the building, whatever, we'll just evacuate people, and we're not going to turn this into, like essentially a bloodbath. Really trying to stop them from getting into the building, because that's going to be a horrible PR nightmare. And so maybe there was something saying, "Hey, look, just if this turns this way, kind of try and do your best, but don't take a stand anywhere." But the thing that concerns me is that they didn't have more police there, especially as people started gathering. They should have immediately called for more backup. They should have had that secured, and they didn't. And I don't know. That's the question I want to know is why wasn't the building more secured, especially in light of the things as it was developing?
Yeah. Well, and I think that's an extraordinarily important point. But it's, again, why are they taking selfies with these guys who ostensibly have forced their way in and who were later, again, given access to Pelosi's office in such a way that, her computer was still on, and she was logged in.
Yeah, and that could be, some of the insinuations about this. You said it was a senator from Pennsylvania that had done that.
Yeah, I forgot the name.
He might. Yeah, he might have. I mean, that might have been what they were alluding to, is that some of the offices or whatever might have been unlocked or left unlocked, so that people could actually get access to it. To play a little bit of devil's advocate, as far as why the police might have been out there, being chummy with them. One, they don't want it to turn violent. So if they're seen as kind of, one of the boys, then they're less likely to, become more violent or more aggressive towards them. They're more willing to listen. Hey, can we be a little bit reasonable here? It's all in good fun. We're kind of one of you too. We support your cause. And secondly, they at the beginning of this, when they were taking selfies, they may not have known exactly, or been under a false belief of who they were actually dealing with, thinking that these really are patriot people. They're not going to be the kinds of people that are going to turn super violent. Not thinking, hey, they're going to storm this damn building. They're just out there protesting their voice, and it's going to be pretty peaceful. and not going to have to worry about it because this isn't Antifa after all, or one of the Black Lives Matter.
Well, they're not black, yeah, so it's going to be okay.
Yeah, so it should be fine, and so let's keep kind of a camaraderie going with the people out here. Try and make sure that everything stays jovial and polite, because we are severely overmanned or outnumbered. But at the same time, there should have been a hell of a lot more people there.
Yeah.
Law enforcement there, and the fact that there wasn't makes me wonder why. I mean, was it simply complacency, saying, "Hey, look, we just got a whole bunch of white people on the right. They aren't going to be violent in any way, so we don't need the extra people in," or which I wouldn't even understand why they would think that to begin with, because in a lot of the protests that did turn violent, great number of those people were white too. So I don't understand the reasoning behind this, or exactly why there weren't more people there, why it wasn't taken more seriously, because it didn't seem to be taken very seriously at the beginning. And even when they were breaking in, going back and looking at a lot of the footage that's there, still didn't seem to be taken all that seriously as they were going into the building.
Yeah.
It just seemed to be, it just seemed like it was just a big old, aw shucks, this is just fun.
Yes, it did.
And it makes me wonder why, because, generally speaking, and, when that happens out in like the real world, you're not usually afforded that kind of leniency with law enforcement. They call in the damn riot trucks and they start hosing you down with water cannons, shooting you with pepper balls. And, if you actually do try and charge their line, you will get shot.
Yes.
And, there didn't seem to be that kind of seriousness with what was going on. And I'm not sure why.
No, that I think so. I think we're all on the same page. And then, so here was the other thing. Trump did a tweet. Oh shoot! I'm sorry. I was going to try to find the tweet, and then I got distracted. So Trump did a tweet. I want to read the tweet here. Trump did a tweet, and then I actually wanted to. So Jake 4D, it was all over social media, so they knew well ahead of time that this was going to be out there. Realistically, it had been known since November 7th that there would be protests on the certification, which is a fair point. I mean, the National Guard maybe should have been deployed ahead of time. But what I'm going to do really quickly is see if I can find. That's the gallows. Here it is. So. And I want to get the exact date. I don't have the date because the screenshot was the screenshot was done, so it only says like an hour ago. So I don't know the exact date and time. But what it says is, please support our Capitol Police and law enforcement. They are truly on the side of our country. Stay peaceful. We know what the side of our country is to him. He has made that clear. That is the side of him that is supporting overthrowing the election. So if he says they're on the side of our country, that suggests to me they are on his side. And that would certainly explain everything. But then the next question is, how does he know that? To the best of my knowledge, and again, this is why the timing is important. I mean, one of the things that we do, as you know, is we try to get as much footage as we can from social media, which is great because oftentimes that means we can get stuff before the regular media. But we were looking for stuff and we couldn't find it. And we were scouring the regular media so we could keep up with what's going on, but we were also scouring social media. And it was it took a while before it filtered down just how much the Capitol Police appeared to have capitulated. Now, once that was clear, I can see him doing this. But this came out, to the best of my recollection, a couple of hours before it was clear how much they had capitulated. So the question is, did he know ahead of time that they were not offering resistance of any kind? That may sound crazy. That may sound conspiratorial. But again, we now have at least one congressman who is being accused of ostensibly knowing ahead of time. And it does appear like it's possible the Capitol Police knew ahead of time and did nothing. So now the question is, did the president know? If a senator knew, if the Capitol Police and the chief of the Capitol Police, who has now resigned, knew, and he probably did if this happened, what's the likelihood the president knew? And that's why the timing on this tweet is going to be important. But anyways, thoughts on that?
I would say that's certainly possible. But I would also say that it could be that they didn't necessarily know that they were going to actually try and take over the Capitol building. The senator may not have known that in advance. The Capitol Police may not have known any of that in advance. But they could have had instructions that, hey, you know, these are the kinds of people that are, it's going to be peaceful, you know, give them a break. You know, we don't want to cause a big bunch of incident because, you know, these are my supporters. You know, this could have come down for this. And have people genuinely believe that they weren't going to try something like that.
Okay. Yep.
So at least the lower levels may not have had any foreknowledge that something like this was going to happen, but had the orders come down from on top, they're like, look, we're not going to have this overpowering presence. You know, these are just peaceful patriots that you know want to have their voices heard, and it's going to be fine. Let's not aggravate them. You know, let's not push. You know, be shown to be pushing back against, you know, peaceful patriots that are in support of you know the administration. And, you know, then some wild people decided they were just going to, hey, let's go hang out in the Capitol building. And that could have come up spontaneously.
Hey, Nancy Pelosi's office is third door to the left. Nancy Pelosi's office, third door to the left. I want to hang there just for a minute.
Exactly. That's, you know, I want to see, you know, I want to see if she's getting, who's mailing her love letters, you know.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's possible that, you know, most of those people weren't aware of what was actually going to happen, but because of the orders of, hey, take it easy, we don't want to confront these people.
Yep.
You know, if they're going to press, you know, I'd rather you fall back instead of creating a big incident and escalating the violence. Let's pull back and, you know, and just kind of give them their way because, you know, they're patriots. So that could have been what they were dealing with on that level, and they're like, okay, well, yeah, we because of this, we aren't, you know, here in force. There aren't a lot of us. There isn't a whole hell of a lot we can do without seriously escalating the use of force to stop them. And we've already been told that is definitely what we don't want to have happen. So we're just going to be, you know, soft-boiled eggs and kind of roll out of the way instead of getting squished in all of this. So that is, and I kind of think, I like to think that people are at least halfway intelligent about the things that they do. And that seems like it would have been a smarter way to go about it. But we are, of course, talking about Trump, and he doesn't necessarily see things that way. But as far as, you know, everybody knowing that this specific event was going to happen ahead of time, I'm not sure that I would go that far. But I do think that there was probably some, you know, like I laid out, that, you know, we don't want to escalate this, so we're not going to beef everything up. And, you know, I mean, that makes the most sense to me as to why they didn't have all of the people there. I still think they should have had them in reserve. Yes. In case things, you know, started getting rowdy and actually turned out the way that it really did turn out. You know, they should have been there in reserve, even if you couldn't see them. You know, they could have held them back, you know, and then when things started, they could have come out and reinforced and started taking control of the situation. And none of that happened. So I can be ambivalent. You know, I can see the point of, you know, we're kind of planning for some stunt like this. Versus, you know, we just don't want to cause a scene. We want to be seen to be supporting the patriots, and then of course he ended up with some nasty groups mixed in there as well. You know, so that even backfired on them. But I think that seems to be the reasonable. I just think that seems to be the reasonable course, or at least the reasonable plan ahead of time, and then things kind of got out of hand, and you're like, well, we weren't supposed to be resisting any of this. This wasn't supposed to happen, and now we're caught with our shorts down. We can't stop any of this, and you end up with parties in the Capitol building.
Well, I do very much concur. I don't think anybody that was working for the government specifically planned for everything that happened to happen. My suspicion is they plan to let them into the building and then have them protest outside the chamber, or even get inside to the chamber and just be a little like, do some chants and then leave, and just make a huge stunt like they got into the chamber and then they chanted and then they left, which that kind of thing happens every now and then, where it's just one person will sneak into a secure area and then, say something, do something, spray graffiti, take off all his clothes and run through whatever it is, and then get out. And this is going to be like, hey, we got in. We're here to say this, this, and this. Better do the right thing or we'll be back. And then they bail kind of thing, because there is now some threats going on as to on the 19th that they're going to return. But at any rate, I think there's going to be a bit more of a military presence, and I suspect they're going to start to see what you had said earlier, the real U.S. military, because I think they're going to take this very seriously, because it's also embarrassing, quite frankly. It's humiliating as a country that this happened. I mean, this is, yeah.
Yeah, and DC is like one of the few places where the military can actually be brought, the actual military can be brought in, because it's not a state, it's actual federal property. And they can use the actual military, whereas you can use National Guard if a governor authorizes the use of the National Guard in states, but in DC it's a little bit different. They can actually just simply bring the army in.
All right, so a couple of quick reminders. Discord, where I figure we'll probably be another 10, 15 minutes. I don't think it's going to be all that much longer, but and I think we've hit the big points. I think this is usually just sort of a wrap-up show. This isn't, and I think we've hit what's really kind of cray. I do want to hit a few more things, and we're going to talk about them. But also a reminder. So at this point, it is crystal clear. Nancy Pelosi wants Trump gone 3 months ago. So she is saying that he has to be removed now by the 25th Amendment. It's possible Pence couldn't even do it if he tried, because we don't know that the Senate support is there, but I suspect the rest of the support he needs is, but I'm not sure he's got the Senate. If that's not done, and I mean within the next 12 to 24 hours, it's clear multiple articles of impeachment are going to be dropped, and they are going to be fast-tracked to the floor of the House. Now, there's a couple of reasons for doing this, and we have as linked to the bottom of this, not to the bottom, right below this episode, our piece on impeachment. And it's if you want to understand how and why impeachment works, I think it's important, and you'll understand what it is and what the process is and why, and that will help you understand what I think is about to happen, because I don't think the 25th is going to be done. Now, interesting note, I forgot to mention this. It turns out, and this is unrelated, I think, to all of the things that have been happening, but Trump, it turns out, has been asking lawyers about the president's ability to pardon himself. I think it's intellectual curiosity, I'm sure. But if the impeachment process, so once the impeachment is a process, and it is often misused as, the whole thing, and then the impeachment is successful if he's removed, or he is impeached if he's removed from, and yada, yada, yada. That's not how it works. And depending on the audience, I decide maybe I'll talk one way or another, because I just want to communicate accurately sometimes, and whatever they use, it's just fine with me. But point being, the reality is he is impeached. The process is simple. I just said simple. It's not. Okay. I just lied. The process is that the Judiciary Committee on the House makes the articles. They vote. If it passes them, it goes to the full House. If it passes the full House, he is now impeached. It goes from the full House to the Senate. They develop rules for a trial. They have a trial. The trial is supervised by the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, but actually is tried by the Senate, with the head of the Senate as the judge, which has significant problems and is a tiny thing. And that's the reason Trump got away last time, because it's mistaken. The Supreme Court is not the judge. They say the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court is the judge. He's not. He's not. If he was, that would have been a very different trial. Nonetheless, one reason they want fast track this for two reasons. They don't have a lot of time to get him out, and he's now dangerous. his administration is imploding. He is losing members of the administration rapidly. Obviously, there's been significant violence, and there's things are coming apart at the seams. They want him gone. So, but the other reason is because the second it passes the House, which if they had that written and they did it now, Pelosi could probably get it through the House in probably 10, 15 hours if she wanted it. If they were written, starting from if it was written and it was if they come up to Pelosi and say, we now have articles of impeachment that have just been finished in the Judiciary Committee, she could get the committee to get it done in just a few hours and then pass it in the House and be done in a total of 10 hours. The second it's done, Trump can no longer pardon himself, period. So that's another reason I think that they're moving quickly. So I think there was another comment I'd wanted to make on that, but it's crystal clear they want him gone. Pence is in a very tight spot. I think he's closer to pulling a trigger on the 25th than anybody says he is, but he absolutely will not unless he's got it dead to rights, and right now I don't think he's got it dead to rights. So, all right, so was there anything else that you had wanted to, could Pence pardon Trump? Oh, and that does, okay, so that brings up one other thing. The crimes being committed, some of them are against the federal government, some of them are against the states. What happened, the recording where he was asking the Secretary of State to find extra votes was actually a crime against both the federal government and the state, depending on how you view it. But at least to the best of my understanding, at a minimum, it was a crime against the state. And so that's prosecuted by the state. The governor of the state could pardon him, but the federal government can't because they're not going after him for a federal crime. So, all of the stuff that was investigated by, I almost called him Mulder. Wow. Oh my God, what was his name? Investigated Mueller. Oh my God, it was
Mueller.
Mueller. Yes. All of the stuff that he investigated, he also worked closely with the state's attorneys general. And the reason he was doing that was so that if Trump pardoned himself or somebody pardoned Trump, the states could still go after him for the state versions of whatever those crimes were. Because the reality is, if you murder somebody in a state, you've actually broken the law in that state and in on the federal level. Oh wait, now I'm getting tired. I'm got to try to figure out how that works. At any rate, so the federal government could go after you, and or the state government could go after you, depending on. And usually, what they'll do is they'll coordinate and they'll figure out who's going to do it. But usually, that's based on who's got the money and who wants the attention for it. And they usually try to make it as high a crime as they can, and that determines on whether you go to federal penitentiary or something in the state. But at any rate, and I'm starting to I'm fading, and it's getting past even where I can opine right now. So. Moving forward, Mueller. Oh my God, I can't even. My brain is not working. I was a little busy last night, and then just been very busy today. So it's sort of like I've had a couple hours of sleep, which was nice, but I'm looking forward to a full night. At any rate, so what is your overall assessment of where we are, and what do you think is the best course of action going forward?
After everything that's happened, I do believe that they probably should drop articles of impeachment and they should try and remove him. Because I think that they should send a very strong signal that things like this, trying to subvert an election, won't be tolerated. I mean, that dance is on the edge of Banana Republic shit.
Yeah.
So I do think that they moving forward, that they should make the effort to try and remove him. Even, a lot of people I've heard talking about, it's like, well, look, it's all going to be over on the 20th anyway. It's like, what else could he really do? It's like, yeah, well, he's got like 2 more weeks. Look what he was able to accomplish in a day.
Yeah.
Don't do that. I mean, and even if you're just doing it as to distract him from trying to do anything else, draws attention towards, something that Congress is going to try and do to hold his attention until the 20th. But yeah, I don't think that these kinds of actions should be tolerated, and especially because it damages the perception of the rule of law, and we don't have a country without the perception of the rule of law. We don't necessarily actually have to have the rule of law, but we do have to have the perception of the rule of law. And as soon as you lose that, things start coming apart.
Important and nuanced distinction, but please continue.
Yeah, and so it's even if what they're doing doesn't actually really amount to anything, they should be seen doing something to stop this, and to let America in general know, this isn't okay, and this isn't something that we can tolerate in our government. I think that there's going to be. You said, where are we right now?
Yes,
and it's
yes.
I think a lot of people are confused, and I think we're going to get a much better. Obviously, when big things like this go down. Does anybody remember that, like 2 weeks ago on Christmas, somebody committed suicide by blowing up a rather large bomb in Nashville?
We aired that live, and I had forgotten. It was 2 weeks ago. We aired that, and I had forgotten.
I know. I have not heard a peep about it. It's pretty sad when things, especially going on at the Capitol, when things start going on that start eclipsing, other what would normally be pretty big news. And it's going to take some time to sort through a lot of this mess. I think that eventually we will have a fairly clear story of what's going on, and I really hope that Congress, especially because Congress is supposed to be there to put a check on the president's power as well. That's why they have the power to impeach. And they should exercise it. I wasn't, up until fairly recently, I wasn't much in supporting actually impeaching him. I hadn't thought that he'd done anything to really warrant being removed from office. I thought he was doing a crappy ass job. But just because you disagree with him or don't think that he's doing a great job isn't grounds to really impeach him. But I definitely think they should now.
I do want to point out, just because I just think it's funny, and somebody pointed this out. Yeah, somebody in our audience predicted at that point that it was somebody attacking AT&T. I was just like, no, I don't think so. No, I don't think. And they're like, yeah, I'll bet you it's the AT&T. There's an AT&T building right there. I was just like, no, it's not. Yeah, it's 5G. I was like, it's not 5G. It was 5G. It was 5G.
Yeah.
All right. So, okay, then the last thing. Is there any way this is going to end without violence? I mean, the reality is that at this point, there is a percentage of the population that thinks that they have been instructed by Trump to protect this Constitution by protecting him. And there was that meme that came out, and this wasn't a meme as in a joke meme. This wasn't because it sounds like it should be, but it wasn't. Oh, dear Lord. Every now and then I'm talking, and then all of a sudden I activate Siri somehow. I got no idea how I did it. So the meme was like, and this was serious. This was all the politicians all lie, senators all lie, congressmen all lie, the ballot counters all lie, these guys all lie, these guys all lie. Trump tells the truth. Follow Trump, something to that effect. I forget exactly what it was. And it was a little scary. And I'm sitting there going, oh, dear Lord, but there is now a significant percentage of the population. And this is why I bring it up, but this is an interesting one. Again, he would need 2/3 of the Senate to successfully achieve Article 25. 7 members of the Senate supported blocking the certification of the ballot. You only need one. As soon as one does, you're going to have a vote, and everyone's going to get the time to talk and yada yada. There's no difference between 7, 1, 100. It doesn't matter. They're all the same. The only reason for the other 6 to go on is they actually wanted to be down on paper as supporting Trump. That's what now. I understand, and somebody had pointed out they're doing that actually for their constituents. Okay, they're not doing that for me. They're not doing that, and so they've got constituents but that tells you something too. How many constituents they have, and they're worried about that, and that's who they're speaking. These people didn't have to. It was done, right? There was going to be the separate votes, and these guys said, "Yeah, I object too," and sort of like, okay. So their objections come down. 7 members of Congress. Now, if you translate that, that would be 7% of the population if you did a really stupid. I'm not sure that I'd think it's that high, but I don't know what the percentage is. But it is uncomfortably greater than 0 that think that this election has been stolen from Trump and that the only thing you can do to save this country is to try to find a way to restore him to power, even if it's through violence. How is it possible to avoid violence going forward? If so, how?
The very fact that I'm having to answer that question in a serious debate is kind of frightening. We should never have been able to get to this point where that should be a serious question to be asked. Do I think they can avoid violence entirely? No. There's definitely people who are far into the Kool-Aid and do believe that the election was rigged and it was, stolen from Trump, and some of them are crazy enough to actually try and do something about it. Widespread, I'm not sure that I would see. I mean, even with the storming of the Capitol building, it was largely unarmed. There weren't, it didn't break out into a major gunfight in the middle of the Capitol. So I'm not sure that I would see a large assault against something like that, but I do think that we'll see pockets of it. And I think that the only real way that you're going to kind of avoid that stuff is you're going to have to get Trump to try and stop it. He's going to have to talk the people down, and he's already shown that he has no inclination to do that at all. That he actually is ginning them up, riling them up, and keeps on with the rhetoric of it. Everything was stolen. That it's So I don't think you're going to be able to eliminate all of the violence. It's sad that there should be any violence at all, but I don't. Maybe I'm just hopefully optimistic, and still kind of having a hard time wrapping my head around some of the actions that groups of people have been taking to think that we've gotten this bad. That the two sides are so opposed to each other that they're willing to go resort to actual violence. That's how civilizations fall.
Yeah, and you had said earlier, and because we had been discussing this just prior to the show, and I think we're going to wrap this up, but that it's amazing because intellectually, right, you're always aware that could happen, right? I think that's what you had said.
Yeah. Like you can sit there. It's like you can go through history, and there hasn't been an empire that's existed that hasn't collapsed, with the exception of the American Empire at this point. They always eventually collapse. So all of this stuff instinctually. You've seen how the formation of banana republics from former actual republics. You've seen dictatorial takeovers of other countries, and yet you realize, at least intellectually, it's like we're not. We're still people. We're still a country. We still have graft and corruption as well. It's not perfect. It could happen here. And you should be vigilant against it happening. And there's a difference between knowing that intellectually and then you actually start seeing these things happen in front of you, and you're like, emotionally, it's a blow. You're like, I have a hard time internalizing that this is actually happening. And it's like I realize, it's like I've spent a lot of time, listening to some crazy conspiracists talking about some of the things that can happen. I've spent lots of, I've got 2 audiobooks on sociology professors talking about how empires collapse, and drawing parallels to some of the things that are happening in the United States. But this is all intellectual thought experiments, essentially.
Yeah.
And when you start seeing some of these things actually start happening, it's still like a gut blow. You're like, I can't believe this is really happening in the United States. Yep. Even though that there's no particular reason why it can't happen in the United States.
Yep.
You still have that shock factor of, oh my God, the general population is so misinformed and ignorant of things that they're actually allowing all of this stuff to go on, and some are actively participating, in things that cause nations and empires to collapse, and they seem willfully dense to the notion that they may be seriously harming, their future. And there's definitely kind of an apocalyptic porn segment where they tout about having a big societal collapse because they think that they're like the super prepper and they're going to survive.
Yep.
And,
Okay,
that's the kind of thing that needs to happen. And there's definitely a subculture of that out there where they not necessarily that they actually really want it to happen, but they romanticize it and they think of how great something like that might be. Tough, but at least we're going to get back to our roots and we're going to get rid of and they don't. It's like when you actually watch footage of places where they collapse, when you read and watch interviews with people who were stuck in the Bosnian War, where they were in a city that was cut off, was surrounded and embargoed for a year, and then you listen to their accounts of what they had to do to try and survive, and you're like, wait a minute, this would suck on every level for everyone.
Yeah, that's the
and
the
you should be
900 day.
doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you should be doing everything. There's two people that have come out and they actually give, and they do it on the, you should be prepared because this can happen to you too. And these are the experiences. This is what really went on and happened, and I hope you can learn from it. Both learn from it so you can be prepared if something like that happens to you, and also so you can be prepared to try and stop something like this from happening at all.
Yep.
And it's truly terrifying. I mean, you always think that you're going to be, you watch even like disaster movies, it's like, well, you see all these other people die, but they're inconsequential. It's like the main character, and of course in your life you are the main character. They always make it through. And
really good point.
The fact is, you're likely to not make it through. You're more likely to die than you are to survive. And I see in a lot of that stuff, it's at least half luck.
Yeah.
So we should not be, we should be outraged that things like this are happening, and we should be stepping back and saying, look, this isn't the solution to anything. This is part of the problem. So I'm hoping, and I'm eternally optimistic that there isn't going to be any more. I remember when in the debates when they were talking about hammering Trump over, would you say right now that you pledged to a peaceful transfer of power? And he kind of refused to answer the question for quite a long while, and he was getting hit so many times with well, he's not obligating himself right now to and I saw he got attacked a lot for that, and of course I'm sitting here still in that kind of blissful bubble of, well, this is America, and of course it's going to be a peaceful transfer of power.
Yeah.
And and I was like, why are you guys making such a big deal out of this? It's kind of, he kind of said the same thing in 2016 too, and now we see all this happening, and we're like, oh shit, that's really bad, and we need to stop with this. Just stop. Don't support people that are trying to cause insurrection, because it never ends well.
Yeah. Well, McConnell's been doing it. I think we need to do a whole show on McConnell, Trump, the whole what they've been playing with, and how aware, and just the cynicism. We're going to do a show called The Cynicism of McConnell. I think maybe just an entire show. Is Andering? It's always a pleasure to have you on, and it was a sort of a last minute substitute, but it's always a genuine pleasure. So I sincerely appreciate you finding the time and joining us. Thank you, Andering.
Well, I just would like to say that I literally had nothing better to do. I was stuck in at a repair shop, waiting for my truck, staring at a wall which just had a picture of one of their new trucks.
Oh wow, that actually works. The shield works. I haven't tested, so that's the in time shield, and this is the in time controls here, and it just accidentally, he was muted. It actually works and mutes. What do you know? Now I'm figuring I feel bad that I dropped the shield on him, so I'm gonna raise the shield, but it actually won't. It's not my fault. The shield won't go back up. Oh, there it goes. Is Andring, you there? Oh, sorry about that.
Here.
I slipped the button, and it was just I don't know what happened. The shield came down.
I mean, like literally had like a rat run across the parking lot to spice up my life. I would have been too busy to engage in intercourse. But there was God, I hope I didn't say what I just think I just said.
yeah, you did, and I was going to sit there and say, I didn't notice and let you walk right by, but then you're like, thanks, Zandring. It's been a pleasure. No, I'm going to roll back what I said about this being a pleasure and a great show. It was going great till I said, thanks for coming.
Yeah, no kidding. Holy crap, I can't believe I just said that. I was never a fan of I misspoke, and it was like, I meant to say, discourse.
So okay.
Oh well.
Okay. It was a good
thank
show.
Thank God I'm half a country away. So.
Well, listen. If Trump gets his way, you'll be at least 2 countries away. All right.
Oh, no kidding. Holy crap.
Jesus. Well, listen. We'll get you. We wanted to have you on to discuss a couple of other things, and we've talked about it. And it's just like, listen, as soon as the breaking news emergency stop, we're going to bring you on. Never mind. Just fuck it. We'll see you next year.
Well, thanks for having me. I don't have anything to plug because I don't really do anything productive. So.
All right. Well,
go watch my storm video. You can go to my channel. It's my name, Sandring Person. You can watch my one little 19-second long video of me driving through a blizzard in North Dakota. It's a pretty significant blizzard.
We'll be up for another 2 minutes, so drop a line in the live chat, and they'll be able to link off your name too. So, and you know what? If I can't, I'll catch it and I'll also put it up. Send me a link and I'll put it in the description.
It's a ridiculous video.
Oh, I know that
the only reason I uploaded it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's literally a video of me driving through a blizzard, and I cut it down to 19 seconds. It was off my dash cam, just because I wanted to see what it was like to upload. Because YouTube sent me a whole bunch of notifications about, hey, you've got a channel now. You haven't managed anything. You haven't uploaded any content. You haven't even put a banner or any of this crap on there. So I was like, oh, well. So I set it all up, and I was like, well, I wonder what it's like to actually upload a video. I've never done that. So all I happened to have was the downloads from my dash cam that I had saved because I had sent them into the office to show them what I was dealing with, because they're like, well, why can't why are you shutting down? You still have 6 hours available to drive. And so I sent them a series of 4 videos of the last 6 hours that I had been driving, and so I uploaded one just to see what it was like. And
all right, well, it's just a blissfully delightful thing. So as you can tell, well, thank you again for joining us. And then what we're going to do, I wanted to just quickly say, on In Time, we've done a lot of unbelievable breaking news, and we've been very fortunate. That absolutely has to go without saying. We've also just had a lot of people who've been very supportive, and so we get shows like we did yesterday, which I think was probably one of the best we've ever done. Really, I mean, it was tough. It wasn't all Shakespeare. I'm not saying that, but for 13 hours and to stay at least equal to mainstream media and stay ahead on a couple of occasions, and to give the kind to just have. And that was everybody. That was just so much information coming in and just being parsed and coming in at the right time in the right place. And we've done shows like that before. The other one I always talk about, of course, is the Iran thing, when Iran was sending missiles into the Iraqi Green Zone. And for those of you, and there's still some of you around who were there for that, and it's just like, it's literally every 10 minutes there was something new that was an international incident, and then we'd go to sleep, we'd stop broadcasting, and an hour later it's like, okay, it's almost World War III, you guys want to go live? And we don't have, there are, hopefully in a year, not a lot of opportunities to do a show like that. And this is a continuation, essentially, of that show. And it's just been amazing. And I am immensely privileged to have so many people dedicating so much to it. If you've gotten this far, hopefully you've liked the show and you think it's worth something. I think it is. I think we try to produce good content. And so if you think so too, like and subscribe. Go on into our Discord. I'm not going to be there. That was 13 hours yesterday and several hours today, along with some other stuff. So I am
Go to
out.
bed.
Yes, that is what I am doing. But to everyone else, come into our Discord, hang, chat, have a good time. We're all available there. I think there's going to be a lot going on. I think it's going to be a busy next couple of weeks. So we are going to be seeing you around. And if you smash that like and subscribe button, and I guess now you actually have to hit like subscribe all now because YouTube. But do that, and you'll know when we come on next. And the next time there's a crisis, we are going to be here as we have been. But
Join
I've
if
been
you
proud,
can.
guys. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, if you can afford it, click the join button too.
Yes, thank you, Ed. I don't know. I always kind of hate shilling my own things, but if you can join, and anybody who joins gets to come to the patron hangouts and gets to and as Andrew, you should be on those forever. I mean, it's just you're basically you've been so supportive. So, but join Patreon, whatever. You're in the Patreon hangouts. It doesn't matter the amount, and there's a lot of other stuff. So, absolutely, thank you for reminding me of that. But come on in, hang out on the Discord. We're there. Somebody's there 24/7. We'll catch you all later. Thank you again, Isandering. Thank you all for joining us. Probably see you in about 20 minutes when something really crazy happens.